Welcome to What Nobody Tells You, Practical Truths for a Better Life. What Nobody Tells You is a podcast about the hidden wisdom that actually helps you live better, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. I'm your host, James Ferrigno. Join me as we explore the truths most people never hear in areas like practical tips on daily living, how to be vulnerable in a healthy relationship, and what it really takes to change your life from the inside out. Through honest solo episodes and deep conversations with guests from the world of social participation, healing, human development, and creatively navigating bureaucracy, this show brings practical insights you can use right away. This isn't surface-level self-help. It's the real work, the quiet wisdom, the things nobody told you, but you should have. If you're looking for clarity, courage, and the tools of everyday life, this podcast is for you. I'm James Ferrigno. Welcome, everyone, to the What Nobody Tells You podcast. And on this podcast, I just try and share information with people that might not be in the mainstream, that might not be readily available, that's also important to you, that it's important to a lot of people's lives. And if you have that information, it could really make your life better. So today, I want to talk about outsourcing your authority. And I touched on this last week, and I thought it's a pretty big subject, so it deserved its own podcast. So here we are, outsourcing authority. So what is that? For those of you who've never even heard that term, don't know what the heck I'm talking about. So outsourcing authority is when you outsource your decisions to someone else. So someone else makes your choices for you, makes your decision for you, and may even do other things for you as well. But with outsourcing authority, they're mostly making your choices and decisions for you. And it's not surprising we have this in our society, and there's a lot of it going on. There's quite a lot. When I turned around and looked at my life at a certain point, I thought, my God, I'm outsourcing almost everything. What am I doing? It's not even my life hardly. And I really learned a lot through exploring that process and becoming more aware of it. And it's completely understandable. So when we're born, we start out, most of us have parents or guardians of some kind, and they have the authority. So they're making the choices and decisions for us. But pretty soon we get handed off to relatives, babysitters, then teachers, then the boss who makes the decision for us. And if we're not careful, we can just get kind of handed along through our whole life and keep our head down and not have to make really very many decisions. Our bosses make our choices for us when we're at work, and I'm not saying this is wrong or bad or it shouldn't be, or that you're bad or you failed, or judging you for anything that you've done or anyone else for anything that they are doing now. This is just to point out what's going on, to expand your awareness so that you can make your own choices if you would like to. If you would not like to, you don't have to, right? So this is just in case you would like to change things, and just in case you would like to be more aware of things. So there's a lot of outsourcing going on. So like I said, teachers are making decisions for us at a certain point in our lives. Bosses are making decisions for us. Companies are making decisions for us when we work for them, but even when we don't, they're still making choices for us. And our physical health, often doctors, nurses are making choices for us. Our mental health, therapists are making choices for us. We're outsourcing our authority to all these people. And we even are outsourcing a lot of our decision-making to AI, some of us, right? And to social media. And our decisions around creativity are often being outsourced to entertainment. So rather than be creative ourselves, probably because we didn't learn how, because we had been outsourcing our creativity earlier, we watch television or go on social media or do something like that instead of ever being creative ourselves. Again, this is not blaming. If you want some information on blaming and judgment, look at last week's podcast. So I go into that in more depth. There's so many places in which we're outsourcing, in general. And it's not, again, that these people are wrong. Teachers aren't bad. Teachers aren't trying to, make our decisions, trying to steal everybody's choices. It's just that we're allowing that to happen, and things are set up so that that can happen. And really, in the end, as soon as we decide we don't want to outsource something, then it stops getting outsourced. So in the end, we're not being forced in most cases to do anything. We're just doing it. So it's the only choice that we seem to be making, a lot of us in a lot of cases, is to not choose. So that's the one choice, is to let somebody else make your choices for you. There are so many places in life where this is true, and it can be problematic, especially when we start to outsource our social decisions and social choices to politicians and governments, rather than make those choices for ourselves. And the voting process is great. However, if we don't educate ourselves and don't know what we're doing when we're voting, then we're not really making the choice. We're outsourcing it to someone else. We're outsourcing it to the advertising we saw. We're outsourcing it to the social media we saw. And that's also an issue, is the social media, where all media really, but social media at the top, looking at something, seeing it on social media, then believing that thing, believing that that's the case without seeing any facts or proof or anything at all. And then basing your decisions on that. So it seems like you're making choices and decisions, but really you've already outsourced them to this other source. That source is where that decision is made. So it's made before it even gets to you. And it can be tricky when it seems like you're making the choice. You sit down in the ballot box and you click, oh, I made a choice. I clicked one or the other. And all of these things are, boy, like everything else, it's context that's important. And it's not what you're doing, it's how you're doing it when you're outsourcing, right? So from the outside, looking at somebody, watching them go through an activity, you can't tell whether they're outsourcing it or not, in most cases, right? So you see someone sitting there voting, and you can't tell where their information came from, if they just got some information on social media they didn't check or not. So when you're able to stop outsourcing in certain areas, it doesn't necessarily look obvious to other people. It's not necessarily something where you really need to change what you're doing hugely. It just allows you to make the choices a little better. And I think there's really a self-respect and self-love that comes from being an adult and making your own decisions and making your own choices. And it's not easy, especially in a culture where we're not really hugely helped when we're growing up to learn to do that. So it's not a high priority of education always, sometimes, to teach people how to make their own choices and teach them how to not get their authority outsourced to something else. Why is this happening, right? Where did this come from? So, like I said, a lot of it just comes from habit. When you're born, you're just doing it already, and everybody else is doing it. And so that's just what you do, right? And the other thing is, you can't really tell you may think everyone else is doing it and they're not, who knows? But it's definitely prevalent. I know you can see with just the rise in social media, you can see the deterioration in people's ability to make choices. I know that it became more challenging for me with the rise of the prevalence of social media, because then I would see these things and I'm like, now I've got to check this. Now I've got to do research now because I've seen this thing. Like, once you've seen it, now you've seen it, right? Now that thing's in your head. So then I would have to go look, do research, find out, is this true? A lot of going to, Snopes, trying to figure out if what's being said is actually the case. And often not. This is my personal experience. Usually when I look up something from social media, it ends up not being true. I don't know, maybe that's just my feed, who knows? And I don't want to say completely untrue, but it'll be a little off, a little incomplete, not really the whole picture, not really what's going on. And it's easy to give a little information on something and kind of make it look like something a little different is happening. And it's not that the information is incorrect, it's just incomplete. So you're like, oh, well, if I had known that about that, then that would have made all the difference. So it gave me more work to do, right? Basically. So I eventually started looking at less social media because it's just too much work to do. So I look at it sometimes. Then it's also, I think when we don't learn how to make our own decisions, how to make our own choices, and when we're in a place where nobody can really see or tell us that we're not making our own choices, well, for one thing, we're just unaware of it. And that can be a reason for it. I mean, a lot of us too are outsourcing our choices to our spouse, to someone else in our family. And I saw this a lot in men's coaching and in dating coaching. I saw it all the time. The nice guy syndrome, I can do another podcast on that, but for now that's, guys not taking their full responsibility and not really be connected with their healthy masculinity. A lot of men allowing the woman in their life, whoever that is, could be their partner, could be their mother, could be their sister, to make most of the big choices in their life for them. And that seems really prevalent. And that's a decent place to start too, with practicing. If you want to begin to make your own choices and decisions, a good place to start is with your spouse or partner and learning how to make your own choices, learning how to make your own decisions, starting to do it. A lot of nice guys don't do it out of fear and out of discomfort. The last thing a nice guy wants is any disruption or discomfort or any time where he has to deal with something, right? I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to have a long, uncomfortable decisions, or I don't want to have a long, uncomfortable conversation. So rather than that, I'll just let her decide. Problem solved. I don't have to make a choice. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to go through a really difficult, uncomfortable thing that I really don't want to go through when I'm tired, So guys will do that. That's very common with most of the guys I coached. Most. Something like that was true. And so even in our relationships, there's a lot of outsourcing of authority going on. And with some people, they're not even having a real relationship with a human, and they're outsourcing the entire relationship to a computer, to the internet. And that gives me pause. Because now you're not just outsourcing the choices in the relationship, but the whole relationship. You're outsourcing that as well. So that's maybe something to look at. And we have, this goes along with the AI as well. It's like, you can, it will do what you want. It will mimic what you are like. So you can get it to make your decisions for you if you talk to it properly. And that is even more. That means the few decisions that were left to you, now you can't make. So in all these cases, with all the other people too, I want to be clear about this. It's not that people are giving you bad advice. It's not that people have any nefarious ideas. It's not their problem, right? If you're outsourcing your authority, you're not making your own choices and decisions, then by default, you don't have the life you want because you're not making the choices. All right. So you don't have it. You of course don't have it. You can't have it. Right. You can outsource some of your choices, but the other people or organizations are simply going about their business, making their choices and decisions. And a lot of people and a lot of organizations are perfectly happy to make yours for you, because they can use your authority. It will actually give them more power in some cases. And sometimes it's a burden for them. So it can have the opposite effect. But the point is, it's not about them. It's not about the other people. Nobody else is doing anything wrong or bad. It's about you. It's about yourself. And do you want the life that you want? Do you want to have the life and the things that you want to have? And if you do, you need to make the choices for it. Also, it's not your fault either. You didn't do anything wrong. It's not your fault. There's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing bad about it. We all do it to some degree, and all kinds of people are out there doing it. But if you want to change, if you want things to be better for you, if you want your life to be better, it would be helpful to raise your awareness of it, at least to become aware, just to pay attention. Hey, am I outsourcing my authority here? Am I outsourcing my choices and decisions to someone else? That might be helpful for you, because then even in small cases, that can really provide something nice for you. If you made the choice, just one choice on one vacation that you wanted to go on, I mean, that's could be kind of a big deal, right? A couple weeks of getting to do what you want to do. And which is not always the case with everyone, right? We don't always all get to do what we want to do all the time. And of course, a lot of us have responsibilities and there's things, but we're making those choices ourselves. So that's the point of this. It's not that anybody's forcing you to do anything. It's just that since we didn't grow up doing it all the time, it can be difficult to make choices and decisions, and it can be easier to hand it off to someone else, much easier. But because it's easy doesn't mean it gives us what we want or what we desire. And we might wake up someday and realize our wants, our desires, our dreams are not there because we didn't choose them. We let someone else choose. And that can happen in all kinds of areas. And it also can happen with your health, with your mental health, with your physical health. So with all of society. So these can be significant things, and your health could suffer from not making your own choices. And again, it's not that the other people are doing anything wrong or that they're trying to force you. I mean, some people will. Yeah, sure, they will. Some people will. But in general, they're just doing what they have to do. And it's up to you to make your own choices. And if you start to change, people will sometimes, people get uncomfortable with the change. Wait, this is not how it usually goes. And there'll be pushback, from it. But, you just stay the course and be yourself and make your own choices. And you can, and it's not that you don't want to be in a relationship and talk to your spouse. It's not that you don't want to have a job. It's not that you don't want to go to school. It's not that you don't want to go to the doctor or don't want, all these things you still do, right? You just, when the other people are saying things to you, it's always something for something for you to think about. When a teacher's teaching you something, it's something for you to think about and something to help you make your own choice. And when anybody else says something to you, it's information that will help you make your own choice. But the point is that in the end, you go through all the things, all the other people talk to you, they have all their input, whatever it is. In the end, you make your own choice, you make your own decision. And that's really at the core what this is about. And we really do get in habits. So we're all raised with this. We all have the habit of, listening to authority figures. And sometimes outsourcing authority is the right thing to do. If you're in the military in a combat situation, often you need to listen to whoever's in charge because there's an organized thing going on and you will mess it up if you don't. So, people could die. So in a situation like that, you listen to the authority. You decide to outsource your authority in that case, right? But you still should decide. Even if you're in the military, it's still your choice. You want to make the choice to do that. You want to make the choice to do that if you want to not outsource your authority. Or not, if you want to outsource it or not. So, and again, I'm not advocating that anyone should or shouldn't do this, that they should outsource their authority or shouldn't. But if you just become aware of when it's happening, you may see whether it's something you like doing or not. And you may see if the outcomes are outcomes that you desire. And if maybe there's other outcomes that you want, that making your own choices would help be what you want. And another reason that a lot of us do this is because now, so many years of doing it, we end up with, and other causes as well, we can end up with low self-esteem, low confidence, low self-love. When that happens, it makes it even harder. So it just amplifies the situation. Then it becomes more difficult for us to even start making the choices, right? So it's challenging. So if you do decide that you want to become aware of these things, really the first step is just being aware. You don't need to take any action. Just be aware of what's going on. Just pay attention. And I think just thinking about this, knowing about it, will help you become a little bit more aware. So one of the reasons for this is self-love, as I said, and or self-respect, if you want to call it that. Some people aren't comfortable with the love word, so that's not always necessary. You can call it self-respect if you like. So the way to develop self-love or self-respect, there's a lot of different tools that can help you do that. And then once you can do that, it will make easier to, when you're more confident, it's easier to make decisions, right? And really that's what freedom is. And what I've found through my life is that freedom is hard. You don't hear this. Freedom is incredibly, incredibly difficult. It is a difficult task. And especially coming from a place of not really having it, it's a huge lift. It's extraordinarily difficult. It is super easy to not be free and let everyone do everything for you. Just sail through. That's why a lot of people do it, because it is hard to be free. It is hard. So along those lines, you need to do some kind of work and do something, expand your awareness to begin to build the confidence and self-love. So there's so many tools that you can use. I will mention some of them. So one of them is just simply monitoring your self-talk. Again, just being aware of things is really powerful. So the talk that you have to yourself in your head, sometimes people do it out loud, but if you're alone, you might speak it out loud, but you might think it in your head more often. And so like if you drop a drink on the ground, right, and it spills everywhere, you might just in your head say, oh God, I'm so clumsy. I'm such an idiot. I'm so stupid. Why did I do that? And so right there, that's low self-esteem. That's lack of confidence. And when you have that negative self-talk, that is really helping to continue that low self-esteem. Just getting rid of the negative self-talk in your head about yourself, judging yourself. And like I said, last podcast, we talked about judgment. And really the big judgment that people have, most of the judgment is spent on themselves. So judging yourself. And when you're doing that all the time and you're saying these negative things about yourself in your head all the time, it really will weaken you and take your energy. And then you won't be able to make your own choices because you won't have the energy for it. If you can eliminate or greatly reduce that negative self-talk and build your confidence, then you'll begin to start to be able to make more choices. And one benefit of making your own choices and your own decisions is that it will start to give you power. Bringing back your authority gives you power, and it will give you, depending on what type of choices you're making, it gives you power in the world, and you become, a force. Little by little. Usually these things do not happen in giant leaps, sometimes. But usually it's little by little and being consistent over time. And then we might even forget how we used to be, that we didn't have much power before. But with the negative self-talk tool is monitoring your negative self-talk. Just monitor your self-talk. Just throughout the day, pay attention. And if you say anything negative to yourself in your head, make a note of it. Make a mental note of it. It would be really helpful if you wrote it down, or even just made hash marks on how many times in a day. Do it for one day and see how many times you do it. And if you get a big number, then you've got something going on there. That alone can completely shift your energy and shift your life. Just that one thing. And another one is like the negative self-talk can sometimes escalate into what I call like beating yourself up. where you really can get down on yourself. Oh God, I'm so terrible. I'm so awful. I'm just an idiot. I'm never going to do anything, blah, blah, blah. If you go on a little tirade like that on yourself, that's something to be aware of. And that's not recommended if you want to build confidence. So if you want to build confidence, if you want to build self-love, that's not recommended. And another thing that can work, one tool, is to just, this is pretty simple, not easy, but simple, is to just slow down in your life. A lot of us are rushing through everything, like rushing through the computer. I am still guilty of it, man. You've got a lot of work to do. You got all these things to do. You rush through them. And when you rush through them, like it throws your endocrine system off, and it really can, you can get adrenaline pumping, which isn't great for you all the time. And, you know, if would be appropriate if you were being chased by a lion, but not so appropriate when you're on a computer, right? So it's not necessarily a great thing. So slow down, do things deliberately. This also helps make you more aware of what you're doing. And I have found that when I slow down and pay attention to what I'm doing and kind of go calmly through each thing I have to do that day, I actually get more done. So somewhere in there when I'm rushing, something's getting lost. And I'm not even really sure how that works exactly, but maybe it's that you're making mistakes and redoing things. I have found that to be the case with myself and with clients. And another thing you can do, I have a very long list of things, but I'll just give you a few of them to start with. This one, this is golden. This is good. This is really good. If you really want to learn to really care about yourself and love yourself, there's a thing called mirror work. And the mirror work is fairly simple. Here's how you do the mirror work. Every morning after you get up, it can be when you brush your teeth, when you get out of the shower, but before you start working and doing things, you know, before you start eating or doing anything else, look in the mirror. For most people, they're in the bathroom, they're brushing their teeth or shaving or something, and this can be a good time to do that. Look in the mirror, look in your own left eye, for 90 something percent of people, it's the left eye. Once in a while, the right, but usually the left. And for 5 minutes, tell yourself that you love yourself. If you're not comfortable with that word, then you can say, how may I serve you? Or I respect you, or I'll always be there for you. And just tell yourself positive things, you know, that, oh, you're really good at whatever it is, soccer or reading novels, or you're really nice to people, or you're generous with your relatives, or you work really hard raising your kids, whatever it is, just say a bunch of positive things. And this kind of makes you go through your life and what you do and realize how many good things you're doing. So if you can do that for 5 minutes, just don't say anything negative, just say positive things to yourself while you're looking your left eye in a mirror. Try and do that every morning for 30 days. And the exercise is that if you miss a day, you have to go back to day one and start counting again. If you can get through 30 days straight, take a look and see where you're at then. That could be really powerful. Another thing to do is to be aware of your physical body at times. This will help you relax. And we're not always in our bodies. A lot of times, especially when we're looking at phones and computers, we get all heady. We get all up here. And this is where most anxiety comes from and kind of disassociation comes from often, you know. So when you're working on the computer, just every once in a while, you know, they say stand up and stretch, which is great for your body. You can also just pay attention to the bottoms of your feet, pay attention to your legs. Paying attention to your lower body seems to work better than upper body, but just be aware that you're inside a body. Be aware that you have one. And what I used to do is just like kind of slap my legs a little bit. Just pay attention to the bottoms of my feet, slap my legs. So doing that will get you more into your body. And that, along with going more slowly, will really help your state. And if you do that mirror work, monitor your self-talk, just try one of these things. And and see how it goes for you. If one of them doesn't work, then try a different one. Everything is not guaranteed to work for everyone. We're all different things for different people. So, but these can help you learn to begin to grow your self-confidence and your self-respect and your self-love. And then when you can do that, then it becomes much easier to begin to make your own choices. And you can begin to make those in a small way. Close to home, I think, is good in your relationships with family. You certainly shouldn't be making any catastrophically huge choices right off the bat. So it's something you probably haven't been doing for a long time. So, and I'm saying we don't make choices. We do. We all make choices every day, but we do end up outsourcing our authority, especially on important things, a lot. In general, in this culture, we do that a lot. So I know that I was doing it a lot too. And again, I am not saying this is bad. Just might not be what you want to do. So it's not wrong. So you want to avoid judging yourself for doing this, judging yourself for not wanting to change, judging other people for outsourcing their authority, judging, this is a nowhere road. It's not going to go anywhere. That's just going to undermine your own self-confidence and self-care in the end and make it more difficult for you to do anything. So nobody else is doing anything wrong. You're not doing anything wrong. You haven't been doing anything wrong. If you try one of these things and it doesn't work, you didn't do anything wrong. If you tell somebody else and they say that's crazy and stupid, they're not wrong. We're all just doing our own thing here. And if you want to become more aware of this, you might begin to, just get more of a handle on your life, get more of a handle on where it came from, where it's going, what's happening right now, and why. Why are these things happening? If you're wondering, why me? For one thing, that's kind of the why me. If you ever go into that, why me? Why do all these things happen to me? Other things. And if you start saying, so bad things always happen to me, this happens every time. So that's a bunch of things. You're beating yourself up. It's negative self-talk. It takes away your confidence and your power. And so if you find yourself in a situation like that, now you will know what is happening. And what's happening is you already didn't respect yourself. Things just spiral. Whichever direction you're going in, you go more in that direction. So if you were raised to not make your own choices and decisions, and you were raised with parents that beat themselves up, then you started doing it, or people that blamed you. Many organizations are good at teaching people how to blame themselves so that they're occupied doing that, so the organization can usurp their authority and have more power. And I find personally that I'm happier having more self-determination and power. I mean, freedom, I guess you could call it. And so if you want to be free, if that's something you care about, not everybody does, but if that's something you care about, if that's something you feel like you want to do, then it's a good place to start. Good place to start is with the self-respect and self-love exercises, and with being aware of your negative self-talk, being aware of when you're outsourcing your authority. And it can be really subtle, like the outsourcing your creativity by watching television instead, or looking at your phone instead, because that's easier to do. But it's also looking at a screen, which can dissociate you, which also isn't necessarily, what your plan was, necessarily what you wanted to do. You were just looking at some social media, and now you're kind of out of your body and dissociated, and, you can get anxiety and all kinds of things from that. Certainly get a lack of courage, that can happen. And again, everyone is different. We're all different. I did a couple podcasts ago about one size fits all. We're all different. We all require different things at different times. Some things are good for some of us and not others. I mean, there is no cure-all. There's no one thing that's going to be good for everybody or help everybody. I've seen some things work for most people, but not everyone. There is nothing like that, really. Not that I can think of. Not in this area. I mean, everyone needs air and everyone needs food. There are things like that. But in this area, when we're talking about self-confidence and self-esteem and making decisions, we're all different. We all have different upbringings, different strengths. And also, it's a growth process. This is another reason not to blame and judge people, chiefly yourself, is that it's a process. We're all in a process of growing up. And we're taught this when you're young. When you're an adult, you're going to grow up and you're going to, but what happens in practice is that most of us don't grow up very quickly or never. And because just the initiation process is not there. I'll do another podcast on that. But since we don't really have that initiation process anymore, at adolescence, doesn't really exist. It has in almost all societies since the beginning of human history until the last few hundred years. But now we're in the situation where most of us don't grow up, or we grow up later. And because we focus on it and we do the work, if we don't focus on it and do the work, unless we're some kind of prodigy, we're not going to grow up. So, and I think you might want to look at some of the people in this world and see how they behave. Look at prominent people and see how they behave. And you might notice that some of them have not grown up entirely. But it's just a process. We're all going through a process. We're all at different places. I've got all kinds of challenges and things going on. I used to have a lot more of them. I'm on the path. I'm where I'm at. And so are you. We all are where we are. There's nothing wrong with any of it. There's nothing wrong with any of it. We're all where we are. I'm not saying there's nothing. There's some fairly evil things in the world, some fairly terrible things. But outside of those, we're all just, we're, going through the process, growing little by little. And I think some of these tools, if you practice them, can help you just speed up the process a little, speed it up for you. Chiefly just being aware of what's going on, being aware of yourself, being aware of your body, being aware of your emotional state, being aware of your self-talk, being aware of what you're saying and doing to yourself, being aware of your decision-making process, being aware when you're outsourcing your authority. All these things are just awareness, just paying attention. But awareness is really where growth happens. That's where it starts, anyway. So, yeah, trying some of these processes, just to go back over them really quick. There was the monitoring yourself talk, the beating yourself up. That's like really going at yourself with a criticism. There's slowing down, being in your body, and doing that mirror work exercise that I described. It can also, I'm just going to throw in one more thing. There are many, but a daily practice can really help this as well. And by practice, I mean something in the yoga, qigong, martial arts, meditation area. So there's a lot of different things there that can be done. It doesn't mean just practicing an instrument every day, although that does have a similar, that's hugely beneficial and creative too. That's a whole nother fantastic thing to do that also will help your life, but it's different. It's not really a daily practice in that sense. It's not a physical practice. The word practice is vague, but that when people say that, they mean something in the yoga, martial arts area, meditation area. So, though, as far as being creative every day and playing an instrument or doing any kind of creativity every day, that's really good too. That's also fantastic to do. When you haven't been doing it, you'll see a change. It can, if you choose the appropriate thing. That's another thing when you make your own decisions and choices. One of the difficult things about freedom is that it's very hard, sometimes you make the wrong choice, Not one. It's probably not the proper language, not the wrong choice, but you make a choice that will result in what you didn't intend. And then you will need to make the choice again. So that happens a lot. But that's how we learn. I mean, Here's another subject: failure. So I think it's pretty out there. I think people are really starting to understand this now. But just to say it concisely, the well, somewhat concisely, the idea of failure is kind of absurd because you can't fail because you tried. And really, it's the putting forth the effort that is the success, not the outcome. In fact, when you're attached to outcomes, when you're attached to what you want to happen, I mean, like emotionally attached, like you really have to have that thing. If you get too emotionally attached, it makes the odds of it occurring less. They diminish. When you have the goal in mind, but aren't emotionally attached to it, it makes the odds of it occurring higher. When you believe in this failure thing that is bad and wrong, that you do something and then you screw it up and you're bad, all kinds of not positive things result from that, of you thinking that you've done something wrong, judging yourself, beating yourself up, negative self-talk, all the things we've just been talking about will all go the way that you don't want them to go when you believe you've failed. But actually, when you teach kids, the way teaching goes is you show them something and show them the letter A and ask them to pronounce it. They can't. So they try and 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 they try until one day they can. And that means they have to fail 100 times before the thing happens or more. The same thing with most kids with, I don't know, anything, practicing an instrument or playing a sport, whatever it is. At first, you can't do it. Again, there's certain rare individuals who can just pick things up. But most of the time, that is not the case. So what we call failure is the learning process. It's most of it. 99% of the learning process is failing. That's how people learn. That is the process. So we don't need to beat ourselves up for it. It's a misunderstanding of what's going on. It's a lack of awareness of what the process is, of what learning is, of what becoming good at something is. It's a series of not being able to do it until you can do it. So there's no reason to judge yourself or the process or anything else when you can't do it, because that's what needs to happen. You need to do that. I used to look at it like, you may have seen some of these graphics or a little cartoon. It's like the steps. There's like the success at the top, and there's a little stairway with each step says failure on it. Failure, 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 failure. There's a little cartoon and a guy walking up the stairs. It's you have to go up every step of failure to get to the success at the top. That's just the way it works, because really the so-called failure is part of the success, because that whole thing is one process. The learning part is a huge part of it. It's necessary. Without it, the other doesn't happen. So without that first step with the failure, that last step with the success never happens. So the failure is the success. So failure is success. We don't really need, for most things, we don't really need that word. It's hugely overused. Practice is a better word, because that's what you're doing. So when you go to, I don't know, you're playing baseball and you go to baseball practice, it's not a failure. It's not an exercise in failure, right? Not in the negative sense. So it depends which one we want to change. Do we want to change the meaning of the word failure, or do we want to change the meaning of the word practice? So see what happens. But like I said, just being aware is a big part of it. And also with outsourcing authority, don't worry about that either. So you fail at it. You're trying to be aware. I failed to be aware today. And then beat yourself up. So you want to avoid that. There really is a spiral process of judging yourself for judging, and then judging yourself for judging, and judging yourself for that you judge yourself judging. I mean, that'll never end. So you don't want to get in that spiral to begin with. So, and the same with all of this, with the being able to make your own choices and decisions. Practice it if you feel like it. It's just practice. So, and all of these things, just practice if you want to practice. Don't practice if you don't want to practice. It's your choice. It's up to you. It's your life, after all. And really, we're all responsible for our own lives. And it doesn't help us to blame systems and other people and other things for it, the things that have gone wrong. I'm not saying horrible things don't happen to people, because they do. But in the end, whatever happens, no matter how bad it is, it happened. And now you got to go from there. That's your life, whether you like it or not. And sitting around saying, why did this happen to me, is not going to help you. It's your life. It's your responsibility. It's your choice. And I think if you practice making some decisions, making a few more of them, see what happens. You might like it. Okay, we're going to wrap up for today. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We'll see you next time. Hi, guys. If you could like, subscribe, follow, share, that way I can help bring you more information and better podcasts in the future. Thanks.